Hello, good morning Australia, good morning Far East Asia, good afternoon South and Central and North America, and good evening Europe. My name is Jacek Spendel, I'm president of Liberty International, and I'm delighted to start today's online discussion, interactive online discussion named Libertarians Against Putin's War. And today I am delighted to have a number of friends, allies, fellows libertarians and classical liberals with me from different countries to discuss the matter. Before I get into the clue of our meeting, I want just to say a few things about my organization, Liberty International. We were formerly named, in the past, our name was International Society for Individual Liberty, and we are one of the oldest organizations promoting libertarianism, started in 1969. So we are over 50 years old, established in the United States, however, working and acting and spreading freedom in all over the world, and mostly in less fortunate countries. And our mission to spread ideas of liberty, ideas of free markets, ideas of freedom, sovereignty of an individual, especially for newcomers to the movement. We are an educational organization, not political one, and our goal is freer future and freer world. And the world is not free. The world is in danger because of the various forces, governments who want to control individuals, control their freedoms in a various scope, in different places, with different amount of interventions. So before I get there, I just want to tell you that at Liberty International, we have multiple different projects, and the one that I promised to promote today, because it's a really nice one, it will happen in August. It's called Liberty International World Conference, LIWC, and it will happen this summer in beautiful Tbilisi, Georgia. Tbilisi, Georgia, between August 11 and 15. Thank you for showing the advertisement. We actually sell early bird tickets in April, so make sure to check the website liberty-intl.org/LIWC. This is going to be epic conference, meeting of all different kinds of libertarians, anarchists, classic minarchists, intellectuals, students, entrepreneurs. And the big topic is how to find freedom in the unfree world. It is based on Harry Brown, and we actually are very practical libertarians. We want to tell you how to be freer, because freedom matters, and freedom matters the most right now in Eastern Europe, especially in the country of Ukraine. As you know, all of you know, it was attacked by Russia under President Putin, invaded on February 24th, so over a month ago. And this invasion started a very bloody war, the biggest war since 1945, and a war that Europe has not seen for decades. This is a war that is discussed broadly in medias, but it's also discussed among us, freedom lovers, libertarians, and apparently there are different voices coming from our movement. We had this little discussion before going on air, and one of us said, even, why do we need to have discussion like this? Isn't that self-explanatory that the people who believe in freedom, individual human rights, natural rights, should be on the side of the victim? From one hand it is, and we'll discuss this today. From the other, apparently big libertarian outlets, especially in the United States, have a different opinion on this. We find different articles, essays on such outlets and websites and think tanks as Libertarian Institute or Ron Paul Institute for Peace and Prosperity, Mises Institute, and even Cato Institute. We find a lot of comments stressing role of United States, and the role of anyone else than Vladimir Putin and Russia in the strategy that happens in Ukraine. My discutants, the participants that I invited for today's discussion, have a different view on this, have a more straightforward, clearer view on what's going on and how does this narrative fits the libertarian agenda. Because we are freedom lovers and libertarians, and we believe that this case must be made, that these arguments need to be told. They need to be told, and hopefully they will be told tonight. I want to invite our fantastic panelists, Nataliya Melnyk. She is from Ukraine, and Nataliya is executive director at the Kaka Bendukize Center in Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine. We have Agnieszka Płonka. Agnieszka is teacher, both in the college and at the private university. She's a writer, and she's staunch activist at Libertarian Association in Poland. We have Federico Fernandez. Federico is president of Fundación Internacional Bases, and he's from Argentina. We have Ilya Fomin, who is Russian but living in Australia. He's co-president of Svoboda Alliance, pro-freedom, anti-militaristic Russian organization in Australia. And last but not least, joining us from Kyiv, actually from capital of Ukraine, Andreas Jürgens. Andreas is German, but he's everywhere, and he's fighting for freedom where freedom is needed the most. And he has many hats, but he's known as founder and head of Freedom Today Media. And Freedom Today Media, together with Freedom and Entrepreneurship Foundations, are media partners of today's show. Okay, enough of me, and I want to tell you, dear audience, welcome, that the structure of the meeting will be first a small discussion between me and the panelists, or you could say small statements. And later we will go to Q&A, because we believe in freedom of speech, and we want to discuss all these unclear messages that are in the air about libertarianism and the situation in Ukraine. I would like to start with Nataliya. Nataliya, as you know, is the only Ukrainian among today's panelists, and she is freedom-oriented activist in the strongest free market think tank, and she can tell us a bit more about how freedom-loving people, activists, and allies of liberty see this situation right now in Ukraine. So Nataliya, please take the floor.
At first, I was a bit startled by your pause after the only Ukrainian. I hope that's never the case. So I do agree that it's very sad that we need to be having this discussion, not just because my country has been invaded, and like we say, this is day 40 of an 8-year-old war, and it feels like it has lasted forever, because Russia invaded Ukraine in 2014 and never left. So this latest escalation actually was quite eye-opening, not only to how psychopathic our neighbor is, but also how supposedly freedom-loving people can misunderstand the situation despite having the luxury of free access to the internet. So I feel that it's really upsetting that I, for some reason, need to be justifying what my country is doing to protect itself. But also I am at the position of, not having to try to be objective in this discussion. So I think I will attempt to use it to the fullest. So in the clear case of a much bigger and stronger ally with a very big nuclear arsenal attacking its peaceful, extremely peaceful, we've never attacked anyone, neighbor, it seems that the situation should be pretty clear-cut, especially, like I said, to supposedly freedom-loving individuals. Since what we are currently doing in Ukraine, we are protecting our land, our home, our lives, our freedom, and our future. I don't know where the confusion, well, I do know where the confusion is coming from, but like I said, it's difficult for me to be understanding in this situation because people should be using their critical thinking. They don't have to be trusting me. They don't have to be trusting the mass media. But fortunately, the internet helps a lot with looking for different sources and comparing your information. But what I see based on the reaction from libertarians and pro-liberty movement from abroad is that basically the reaction is out of spite. Right, so we hate the government. Our government is corrupt. The Western world is corrupt. Right, we're against NATO because it's encroaching. So we're just gonna believe the opposite to what they're saying because what they're saying must be lies. And if we believe the opposite, then that's exactly what Russia is saying. So newsflash, Russia is not the most reliable source of information, especially under these circumstances. So guys, please use your brains if you do have them. So it's a clear case of Ukrainians, right? We're not talking about the government. We're not talking about some mythical Leviathan creature. We see the case of Ukrainians taking up arms to defend themselves by any means possible. So arms literally and figuratively, because what my organization is doing, what our allies and similar organizations are doing in Ukraine is not something that we ever wanted to have to do. So before February 24th, we all were running our projects, dealing with, internal issues in the country, working on promoting economic freedom, because Ukraine is one of the least economically free countries, not only in Europe, but in the world in general. So yeah, our country is not perfect and we were dealing with our issues. But then on February 24th at 5:30 a.m., everything changed. Because suddenly we had shelling going on all over the country. And we woke up with the only phrase on our minds that it has started. And since then, we've united forces with both allies, with people of different worldview, with our government, and I'm not afraid to admit that, with our military forces, territorial defense, and everyone else involved to make sure that we survive this. Because if Russia wins this war, which I'm sure it won't, there won't be Ukraine anymore. Meaning a Ukraine, a free and prosperous Ukraine that we would like to live in. And let me remind you that Ukraine might look small on the map compared to Russia, but it's 40 million people. So I think our, country, allies should be very well invested into helping us out of this situation, unless they want to be dealing with a lot more refugees than they're dealing already. And let's not forget the fact that Ukraine feeds 500 million people around the world. So this is not a Ukraine issue. It's much bigger than that. And I feel that under the circumstances, we have all the right in the world to be defending ourselves and not having to also, deal with this absolutely outrageous storm of misunderstanding coming from people who should be our allies, because we are already fighting on that front. We already have to deal with a very powerful Russian propaganda machine, which is very far-reaching. But before these events, I actually thought they were kind of more limited to our region, not just Russia, not just within Russian borders, but more to our region. But I was very disappointed to see that it's a lot more far-reaching than that. So we are doing what we can to spread the information, to write about things that we see, to help deliver them to whoever is willing to listen, to whoever is willing to read. And because the things that are happening every day in my country, these are war crimes. And I don't think that any person with clear understanding of what is right and what is wrong should be confused in this situation, because what is happening here is absolute evil, and the perpetrator of this evil is Russia. And I feel that we should be using the correct words, and we should be explaining things as they are. And I absolutely disagree with the notion of it being Putin's war, because it's not Putin who is killing children after raping them and shooting civilians when their hands are tied behind their backs, and looting the houses afterwards. So I think that would be my part for right now.
Thank you, Natalia, and thank you for being so courageous, for standing up for your country. I know that free market think tanks, including yours, do a lot. They are members of Atlas Network, and they are very involved in humanitarian help as well. Next person I want to discuss this issue is Agnieszka Płonka from Poland. And Agnieszka is this person whose opinion in the blog post, "Don't say Russia, say the gang," sparked thinking in me that I would like to have this conversation, this meeting. And we started talking, and this is the fruit. Agnieszka wrote another article later in which she very nicely and thoughtfully respond to the most popular and this is the ideas among libertarians who have a different mindset about this war. Very often they say that the NATO should not even exist because Soviet Union was collapsed in 1991, 1992, that the Soviet bloc died, and there is no reason for such an alliance, that United States and Western Europe could basically change its course. And Agnieszka claims differently. She says that the Cold War has never ended. Agnieszka, please elaborate more on this.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I think it's a crucially important discussion to have right now. So yes, I was thinking about the optics that some people have today in the world about the current war. And I was thinking that there was a time in history, not so long ago, when this optics, also with libertarians and with American libertarians, that this optics was a bit clearer. And that was the 20th century. So if I ask you this open question, imagine a person escapes from the East Berlin to the West. How do you greet them? Do you tell them, oh, but Western governments are also criminal? This person just got away from the Soviet Union. right? They will just look at you startled with these traumatized eyes. What are you talking about? I just escaped the Soviet Union, right? Back in the days, of course, during the Cold War, the ethical divide between the Eastern Bloc and the Western Bloc was clear. It was clear, like, what is evil and what is the lesser evil, right? Then the question that needs to be answered today is, how is today different? Is today's Russia different than its Soviet legacy? Now, if we take a look at Russia, and I'm sure Ilya will also tell us that from his side, we know, in 1917, with the Russian Revolution, the bloody political police of the Soviet Union came into power. They were first called the ČK, then GPU, then NKVD, and then it was the famous KGB. So they started with mass executions, with totalitarian control of the entire Russian nation, much worse than under the previous times. And we know that during the Cold War, they killed dissidents, they put propaganda in your daily newspaper, and they ensured control. They control every aspect of Soviet citizen life. What happened then? Were they overthrown? Well, no. What happened is they got bankrupt. Because socialism, it goes bankrupt, right? It collapsed under its own weight. So after they got bankrupt, there was this period of economic collapse that was due to happen, and Russia got into some 10 years of gang wars. So imagine one criminal organization runs out of power. We have a little bit of gang wars, and then in the year 1999, so that was 10 years after the fall of the Berlin Wall in Berlin, right? The KGB, that is now called the FSB for the internal affairs, they took their power back. And now the question is, how do we know that? Because it is not a secret. They celebrate it openly. How do we know that? For example, in Russia, one day that is celebrated in December is called the Chekist Day. That's 20th of December. And they celebrate creating the Soviet political police in 1917. They openly call themselves Chekists. And in 1999, they installed their person, Putin, which we know he started in the KGB. There is a book and a lot of other materials that describe his path through the structures of this organization. And when they installed him back in the Kremlin, grasping the power back from this gang war, he said, and that's a quote from him, during a meeting of FSB agents, he said, "We are back in power. This time indefinitely. We are back." Why back? Because the employment structure between the KGB and the FSB, this didn't change. You could compare it to, having the same people that were running Gestapo put back into power after some turmoil in Germany. We know that the archives of the 20th century and the Russian atrocities that were done in the 20th century and in the 21st century, they are not open and in public. We know that people that go against Putin's agenda are oftentimes found dead. For example, the journalist Anna Politkowska, she specialized in the Chechnya war. She was killed on Putin's birthday as a birthday gift. Also, the Russian anthem was put back to its Soviet melody. The symbolics worn by the Russian army was also put back to those that were in the Soviet times. Now, I do not believe, of course, this is not under communism as it has fallen. We need a new myth. We need a new tradition, new kind of propaganda, but it will still be the propaganda of control. How do we know that the FSB is back in power? Like in the year 2000, Patrushev, who was the director of FSB, which is the today's KGB, he gave an interview to a newspaper that is called Komsomolskaya Pravda, one of the biggest media outlets in Russia. And he said, "We did not throw away our history. We are openly admitting that the history of Lubyanka, which is the headquarters of the KGB, in the 20th century is our history. Is our history." This is what he said. So he is admitting that the 20th century history of performing mass executions in that building, torturing people in that building and killing the whole backbone of the Russian nation in that building, and then executing other nations like the Finns and the Poles in the forests around Moscow and in Russia. That is their history. They openly claim it. They say it in their biggest media outlets. And that interview was published during the Czechist Day. It's a really chilling quote. And the person who wrote a book about the continuity between the FSB and KGB and the rise of Putin in this organization, he was found dead in his apartment. So he is not going to write a lot anymore. Now, the question is, like, two other important things that have to go to my statement. How do they do propaganda today? Because it seems that Russia is a pluralist country, that they do not have this, we are not in this ideological war with communism. So what do they do now? Well, they have their new myth of control. They adjust it to circumstances. So the Kremlin's ideologue that is called Alexander Dugin, he created this whole weird, not necessarily consistent ideology of Russian Mir or of Eurasia, where you take control, you take some kind of very weird mysticism, but the thing is, everything that is Eastern Slavic, or even everything that is on Eurasia, it has to report to Moscow. So Putin wants to be remembered as someone who brought the Soviet Union back, and the Soviet Union meaning geopolitically, meaning in this neo-imperialistic agenda. He even said in an article that was then taken back because he thought he would win in Kiev, but he didn't, that this tragic year of 1991, the fall of the Soviet Union, it was a geopolitical tragedy, but now the order will be brought back. This is what he means by the order, killing civilians. And every Eastern Slavic president was supposed to be a puppet president for Moscow. So even Kadyrov of Chechnya, when he was addressing Zelensky, he said, apologize to the big guy in the Kremlin. How dare you dream of being a sovereign state? You are supposed to be a puppet regime like Belarus. But and I can tell you that people that had enough experience in the East, their elections, they don't need to be influenced by the West, because they have this demonstrative preference that, knowing what the East is like, they do want to associate with the West, because in the world of imperfect choices, and of course that choice is imperfect, the West is still far better. It ensures your some kind of freedom that you wouldn't have under Putin, you wouldn't have under the new repainted Soviet Union, you wouldn't have in this weird ideology of Dugin. So you can say, yes, all governments are criminal, but some governments are more criminal than others. And also a defensive war, when there is a defensive war, you side with the victim. Now, whether you side militarily or just morally, that's another issue. And I'm not going to go into that. You know that lies and murders and abuse of human freedom by North Korea or China or Russia is a completely different level than lies, murders, or abuse of human freedom in the West. And another thing I have to tell you is how that propaganda works. There are some things in this propaganda that are the same, like done by the Soviet textbook. And I mean by calling people fascist or calling people Nazi. You have to understand that Russia has this ideology, like that has this big, even sacred opinion of what they call the Great Patriotic War. So they call it the war that happened between 1941 and 1945, because of course nothing happened between 1939 and 1941. Stalin did not collaborate with Hitler. What are you talking about, right? But in these 4 years, they defeated the Nazis, right? So now anyone who is against Moscow will be called a Nazi as a form of emotional manipulation, and they are doing it right now. What is baffling to me, that some people actually fall for it. So this is this manipulation technique that throughout the Eastern Bloc is widely recognized. Like they know that Muscovites, they just call people, they just call anyone who disagrees with them fascist, and that's a great emotional manipulation technique. But this, what it means in their mouth is, well, you are against us, you are against our world of control, you are against the Soviet Union 2.0. And until the archives are made clear, and until the history of the building of the KGB is condemned, and it is not, it is celebrated. This history has to be condemned, and free Russians have to take over the country, because if they don't, the violent pattern of Moscow will return. So it's all on people like Ilya right now. And by the way, right now, if you are a teenager in Russia, you play a video game and you blow up the building of the KGB, you get sent to a penal colony.
Thank you, Agnieszka, for your powerful statement. I agree definitely. The Putin's vision is, and he said that many times with different words, Soviet Union 2.0 needs to be reestablished. So the consequence of these words is that sovereign countries cannot exist, that countries such as Ukraine, Belarus, Baltic countries would need to become a puppet countries, eventually no countries. People in the West, some of us, even some libertarians, believe this is about NATO coming so that Ukraine can be outside of NATO and still sovereign. Good luck with that. It cannot. And we will talk more about this in a moment. We have Ilya, who is Russian, living in Australia though, and he actually will talk more about the fascist roots of the current Kremlin regime. But before you start talking about this, Ilya, tell us a bit, what's the flag behind you?
Yep. Yeah, I hope everybody can hear me. So this is the new flag that Russians around the world are using now to declare they're against the war. Because for us it is ethically unacceptable to use the tricolor, the white, blue, red flag, which is used to occupy Ukraine, under which the civilians are killed. So of course for us it is absolutely impossible to use it, so we use that. I think here in Australia we were one of the first to propose this flag, because the idea I think appeared in pretty many countries. So there is not only as there is one common explanation, like common within 1 month of war, the tricolor without blood, but there is also the thing that we keep in mind, that these are the colors of Novgorod region, and the Novgorod Republic back something like 600, 700 years ago was the only truly democratic state within the current borders of Russia. So for us it is also a kind of a historical perspective that there were democratic states like more liberal states within Russian borders, and we want to say that it is possible on the territory of Russia. So I think I can continue with the talk. So, of course, the ongoing unjustified and brutal military occupation and atrocities of Putin's Russia in Ukraine has raised many questions, and one of them is how Russia became a fascist state. So it is a short talk, and I'd like to focus more on the processes in the society rather than well-discussed processes in the government, in the state security services, and other things. First of all, a strong imperialistic sentiment in Russia exists from the time of Russian Empire and the USSR, and propaganda has been working for years to explain to the Russians how humiliated was Russia in the 1990s. So presumably humiliated with the opportunities to trade, to run their businesses, to create their associations, to be able to actually speak. So in the 2000s, the government was very separated from the society. The social contract at that time can be described as the society does not ask the government how much do they steal, and we can see from Alexei Navalny investigations they steal a lot. And the government does not ask the society how does it survive. So it's pretty easy, I think, and pretty clear to see very deep water mines, pit holes in such a paradigm. It is a way to hypocrisy and extremely high corruption, and it is also a way to lose any feedback within the country. So for us, for Russians, the turning point was 2011, not even 2014, when the peninsula of Crimea was annexed was occupied by the Russian forces, but 2011. That was the moment when Putin's pocket party stole 17% of the votes. It allowed them to get the majority of seats in the parliament, the Duma. The massive protests of these days, and I attended almost every event these days, and I was detained during these days, didn't result in the change of government. That was the moment when one political party declared their ideas and values are more important than anybody else. So for me, this is the moment when Russia became a fascist state. And if we want to analyze anything, what had happened after, and actually what had happened before, because it was not just something that happened, but it had a long story which allowed that to happen, we need to think about the year 2011. So occupation of Crimea and parts of Donetsk and Luhansk areas were a manifestation of the growing imperialistic appetites and ambitions. And I would like to specifically point out that an extremely humble reaction of the world community, including the European Union, in 2008, in 2011, and 2014 was widely used by Putin's propaganda to legitimate their actions then and later. So the lack of strong sanctions was not only just humble and strange, but also unthoughtful given the Russian ambitions, nuclear warheads, and a role of the principal supplier of the commodities. So I would like to specifically say that in the world when we live with pretty strong governments, it is also a responsibility of every government to keep other governments saying that they should align with certain rules and values such as human rights and democracy in general. And in my talk, I would like to focus on one specific question. Why do Russians tolerate the government? So again, many votes, 17% are stolen. 17% of votes are stolen during every parliamentary run. So the parliament is not very representative coming to Russian society. So why do Russians tolerate this parliament and this government? First of all, the income of Russian budget from commodities like oil, gas, and metals made up to 65% of the budget. So there was no reason for the government to invest into human capital itself. It is no reason to have educated people, to have people with pure knowledge of their freedoms and interests, if they can do it with they can make profit with commodities. This cheap money allowed to employ around 10% of the able-bodied population in various law enforcement structures collectively known as siloviki. It is an extremely high number, 10% of the able-bodied population, and requires at least a comparable amount of people to come down to the streets to resist and overthrow this force. Again, the Kremlin holds almost absolute control on the information in the society. In the years 2018, a journalist was killed every 2 months. Just imagine, every 2 months, a person was killed for their job duties. Russia ranks number 150 in the Freedom of Press Index. Informed decision making can't be done without the information itself. And it is talking about propaganda. If people do not have access to any independent information, of course, they simply cannot make any decisions. So, however, I find the level of individualism and egoism in the society is the most important factor contributing to the current situation. There is I was looking for different indices to measure it, to measure the level of altruism in the society, and I found the Giving Index, which puts Russia on the place number 117. I'd like to emphasize a principal difference between egoism and libertarianism. The latter implies a cooperation between individuals to promote their individual and shared liberties. So if I am a classic liberal or libertarian or whoever, I want other people to have their freedoms, to exercise their freedoms, because I know that it will help our society to be representative, to be our society to be free, and to be our society in the end effective. So the phenomenon we observe in Russia, with these 117 places, basically in the very, very end of the list, is a total degradation and collapse of horizontal ties in the society and even of the family ties. A perfect example is the Victory Day celebrations, which is extremely chauvinist holiday when mothers dress their children, including toddlers, in military uniforms. This is a symbolic sacrifice of their individual freedoms in the interest of the state, or if we are talking about Putin's Russia, Putin the usurper. The absence of countrywide anti-war protests in Russia is a result of a very short-term, narrow-minded, egoistic planning of most Russians. Russians rather prefer to abandon their relatives and friends in Ukraine, to abandon those who are protesting in Russia, to abandon their children and future. Interestingly, under the pressure of sanctions, many Russians tend to unite around the government. It is a direct outcome of the destruction of family and horizontal ties in the society. People do not see their class interests as business owners, scientists, professionals. They do not see these class interests to be important enough to push the government to follow their interests, not the interests of Putin. The level of fear in the society is so high that people in Russia are still living on the first level of the Maslow's pyramid of needs. These people look for a safe haven from their own government, and it results in their silence. While I do not see a straightforward way out of the war, which will ensure Ukraine obtain enough funds to refund all the losses that this beautiful country has suffered, I would like to formulate a question. Having a certain freedom is not a built-in skill. It might be a right from birth, but like any other tool, it needs practice of exercising this freedom, fighting for this freedom, and helping others to have this freedom as well. It is a skill, and this skill needs to be trained. So how can we educate people after this system, the Putin's Russia, collapses? Or if or when the regime falls, can we as a worldwide community provide not only humanitarian aid but also a mental aid, a curse or set of curses which will be reasonably short and powerful enough to explain them what a liberal or libertarian society should be. The examples of Belarus, Russia, Germany after the First World War show that without a hard work on the psychology of the society, the history will repeat itself. The examples of Ukraine and Germany after the Second World War show there is a path out of this loop. Lustration, open archives of the security services, and education are the only way out of the tolerant psychology in the society. Russian diasporas abroad can be considered as a test case. There are so-called Russian councils affiliated with the embassies and therefore constitute Putin's soft power. But there are very few of grassroots movements of Russians with democratic or libertarian beliefs. Can Russians abroad unite and act in their interests? There is a test case here in Australia, our Svoboda Alliance, Australia and New Zealand, and I'm talking on behalf of this organization. Poisoning and further arrest of Mr. Alexei Navalny was a trigger that moved many people to streets so that active Russians could finally find each other and unite. We established several non-for-profit organizations to organize rallies, work with media and share information, and work with politicians, including petition the Australian government. Today, we stand with Ukraine. We collect humanitarian aid for Ukraine. We advocate those policies of the Australian government which will help to defeat and collapse Putin's Russia. We collect information about those affiliated with the regime to ensure nobody of them escapes trial and punishment. We seek information about the assets of Putin's people and demand their money to be frozen and transferred to Ukraine. A week ago, we presented our movement at the Australian National University for many Slavists and ambassadors of many countries, including the European Union, Denmark, France, Georgia, Germany, Poland, Ukraine, Lithuania. It was an important message. There is such an established movement, and for many of them, it was a clear surprise. Our movement involves more and more people, but we see it as an extremely slow process, which will take years for in a small diaspora in a democratic country. So, how can we educate the people they turn to liberal or libertarian values? We need a mental cure to expel the curse of totalitarian ideologies from people. Slava Ukraini! Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Ilya. A voice from Australia, and now let's hear some voice from Latin America. Federico, how this war is seen in Argentina, in other Latin American countries, and also among libertarians in given region.
Thank you, Jacek. I'll try to be brief. Firstly, well, thanks to you for the invitation, and thank you very much also to Sebastian, your colleague, who is, handling everything technically and doing an amazing job. And of course, I'm very happy to be here with all my fellow panelists, and especially with Nataliya, who, it's one of the bravest persons I know, and well, I hope she can return to her home very soon. As you mentioned, Jacek, yeah, I'm going to be talking just for a few minutes about, let's say, what's been the reception of all this conflict and this invasion in Latin America, in Argentina, and some other countries. And for that, let's say, there are many things we can mention. I made a list of some that I would like people to know, particularly who are not from the region, and maybe to have an idea. Of course, I will mention also certain libertarian responses, but I'll try not to go too much in depth with that. Regarding media, for instance, let's say in what we could call independent media, or not state-run media, the response has been very much, let's say, of being appalled for what's going on and trying to inform, particularly now with the atrocities we are knowing. The state-run media has not had the same position, and this goes very much hand in hand with the fact that, for instance, the president of my country, of Argentina, who happens to share my surname, by the way, but we thank God we are not related. He was with Vladimir Putin at the beginning of February, when the mobilization of the Russian army was blatant, and he said that he wanted Argentina to become the gateway for Russia into Latin America. So those things are happening, and this, I think, what unfortunately our president did not that long ago, shows how strong the penetration of Russia in Latin America is. And let's say, even though there are several countries that we could discuss, one is the country, one is Argentina, and in all these cases, I'm talking about the governmental level, not the civil society level. In the society, I would say and probably in the opposition parties, the view is completely different and is not pro-Putin at all. But in certain governments, the situation is, let's say, at least quite shaky. And like I was saying, well, Argentina, unfortunately, is one case. Of course, Bolivia, Brazil, to a certain extent. But the worst case, and let's say like the beachhead for the entrance of Russia into Latin America, is Venezuela. And in the case of Venezuela, I think it's very, we can claim, and I think with very good reasons, that the Maduro regime has survived basically thanks to the help of Russia and China the last couple of years. And by the way, Venezuela nowadays is it's like this, it's like these entities that are trying to find, some sort of parasite that rules them. And that is basically what Venezuela is nowadays. First, the totalitarian know-how came from Cuba. Now it comes, of course, from Cuba, but also from Russia. Maduro has been able to continue robbing the Venezuelan population thanks to the help of the Kremlin, and I mean regarding the selling of the gold of the international reserves that he shouldn't be selling or touching, and this has happened the last couple of years thanks to the help of the Kremlin. And in that sense, and with this, I'll try to wrap up. Putin and Putinism in Latin America, but I think this could be probably be used as a model in other parts of the world as well. Putinism has been some sort of bacteria that, you know, feeds from our weaknesses and from people's stupidity. And Putin has been extremely clever in finding a lot of useful idiots. And when we check, let's say, the kind of coalition, if you allow me to use the term, that Putin has created abroad, you know, not within Russia, but abroad, it's really something that in a way is magnificent, you know, for lack of a better word, because it's a coalition that literally has on the right, you have literal neo-Nazis or far-right people. You have libertarians and a very anti, let's say, US foreign policy that it's something that, you know, by the way, is quite questionable and should be criticized, but, you know, going to the side of Putin is probably a little bit, you know, going too far. And you have on the left people who are nostalgic of the USSR, who are, you know, actual and literal communists, and anti-American, well-meaning progressives. That is the coalition that sustains Putin abroad. There's a lot of that, unfortunately, in Latin America too, particularly in the governmental level, not in the civil society level. And just to wrap up, one thing that I wanted to bring to everyone's attention, when I was listening to you and thinking about to all the panelists and thinking about all this, it came to my mind something that Václav Havel wrote, I think in his autobiography, To the Castle and Back, when asked about Ukraine and its future. He said that it was up to Ukraine to decide whether it was part of Central Europe or not. And you know that term Central Europe entails a lot. And I think Ukrainians have made their chance, and they made their chance back in 2014, by the way. And it's up now to all of us to support what they are doing and to have a free Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Federico. It's true. In Latin America, Putin has a lot of friends on the far left, especially Venezuela, and basically it's their axis of evil. It looks like this. The worst, you know, leaders of the world together. And our last panelist, last will be the first, right? Andreas, he's a hero, you know. He's on the 21st floor of a building in Kyiv and doing some amazing things. So I better give the mic to him to tell us more what he's doing there, how he's helping Ukraine, and why libertarians should not be confused anymore.
Hello to everybody. First of all, thank you for the other people who were talking before me. I couldn't agree more with Nataliya for sure. I can't be neutral anymore. It's now my second time during the war when it started, when I'm in Ukraine. The first time was 10 days. Now I'm here since 4 days again. To be honest, I'm not really prepared. I haven't prepared a talk for that topic because I thought we're gonna make it a little bit freestyle. The thing is, I thought about let's talk about two things. What I wanted to address, which are really important for me. First of all, I can tell you about my experience here in Ukraine, and the second thing is let's talk about Russian propaganda. So I started a little bit earlier. I started in 2014 when the Maidan protest started in the Revolution of Dignity. That was the first time in my whole life when I got contact with all these Russian propagandists from all over the world. I will include the Ron Paul Institute, the Mises Institute, and all these people. And to be honest, I will spend all of my power I'm gonna have and all of the people I know to fight these people, because they are not libertarians. And everybody who is now right now on the side of Putin, or in any way of what Russian propaganda is addressing, I will fight them with everything I'm gonna have. So let's start with my experience here in Ukraine. So I'm running a media company. I'm the CEO of Freedom Today Network. So the first thing we did after the war started was to went to Poland, to all the refugee camps, to take pictures of what's going on, what's going on with the people. Then we went into Ukraine, which was really hard, because all the pictures I saw. Just to give you an example, at the second day of the war, we went to a refugee camp in Lviv, which is on the west side of Ukraine. Just to show you what a war, or what people feel about that war. At the second day of the war, we went to a kindergarten, like a kindergarten in an office building, and all these children, even after 2 days, were just drawing tanks, bombs, soldiers. Like, this was so horrible to see, even after 2 days. So and then we went on to make interviews with historians. I interviewed a guy who was 10 years in the Gulag. We went with people to all the shelters they created. We talked to politicians here in Ukraine. We talked nearly to everybody we could get. Right now I'm in Kiev, like Jacek said. I'm in the 21st floor of a skyscraper in Kiev. And that's by the way why the light is so dark, and maybe that's also the reason why Nataliya has turned off her light, because I don't want to get missiled or bombed or whatever, because it's super dangerous to be here right now. So let me tell you a little bit more about my experience. Like, even the last days, I don't even remember how many times I've been in a bomb shelter right now. You get used to it. It's really kind of strange, because many Ukrainians I know get used to it as well. Sometimes they don't even react anymore on an air raid alarm, which is totally, I mean, strange in a way, because it can. I mean, you can be hit everywhere. I mean, it can be hit a building close to you. It can be hit a building which is like 10 kilometers away, or it can hit a kindergarten. It can hit a hospital. It can hit everything you can ever imagine. And all the pictures I've seen in the last 40 days, I would say I was 20 days in Ukraine at least. I don't even know what to say anymore. That's really the truth. I mean, I've seen pictures nobody would or wanted to see. That's really hard to. I was just today at a building in Kiev which was bombed. I talked to 2 women who were rescued after 5 hours after their building was bombed, and to be honest, what is really fascinating is they haven't been even. How to say this? They haven't been even mad on Russians in general. They just take the situation how it is. These people here in Ukraine, I've never seen in my whole life so brave people, and this is from my point of view. This is why we have to step up for these people and support these people. And in this case, I think one day before the war started, we created a foundation. It's called standwithukraine.ch. We were collecting donations for them. We try to help them as much as we can with money from all over the world. We buy, for example, we buy bulletproof vests. We buy night scopes. We buy everything they can get to protect themselves, because I mean, it's an individual right to protect yourself. So then let me go on with some stories. For example, tomorrow I will go to Irpin and to Bucha, where all the massacres were happening. And I already talked to people who have been there, to journalists from Germany, from England, from all over the world. And these people, I know some of the journalists since years, and they were like super tall men. I've never seen men like this crying. And I don't want to get this too emotional, because I mean, we just have to check out the facts. I don't know how many times I've cried, or for example, I don't know how many times Nataliya have cried, or just from the middle of nowhere, because I mean, everything what's going on here right now is I mean, it's a disaster. I can't even find words for that. And even if I ask people from Ukraine, they can't find words for that, what's going on here. All these unbelievable crimes, what's going on. I mean, all these rapes of children, of grandmas, of all these stealings, all these I mean, I don't even know what I shall tell you right now, or which example I shall give you. I mean, there was an example. There was a Russian soldier who entered a house. He never saw in his whole life Nutella. Or they stealing everything, washing machines. Yeah, they raping small children, and after that they killing them. So from my point of view, it's really hard to talk about it even. I mean, I'm not an Ukrainian, but we have to report it, and we have to show the world what's going on here. And the worst thing is, I mean, the whole world right now is talking about the massacre in Bucha or in Irpin and all that shit. But to be honest, I mean, there will be towns, 50, 60, 70, 80 towns, which will be liberated in the near future. And you will see all these pictures again and again and again. Yeah, and we have to stop that. And to come back to 2014, when the Maidan revolution happened, we were here a short time after that, and we produced a documentary 5 years ago, which were called Russian Aggression and Western Ignorance. So in this documentary, we interviewed a lot of people, even the former right hand of Vladimir Putin. His name is Andrei Ilya Ranov. Sorry for not pronouncing it totally correct. So he left Russia, and he was working for the Cato Institute, and he showed us all the plans. He predicted everything what is going on right now 5 years ago. So he showed us the plans to attack the Ukrainian state, and he said the plans to attack Ukraine was even 10 or 11 years prior. So everything of that is planned since a long time. And the biggest problem is that many journalists, even from the West, or especially from the West, they just ignored it, or governments just ignored it. I mean, I was born in Germany, so look at the German government. They have no idea what's going on. I mean, their help is really bad. The Ukrainian government, just to give you an example, were applying for anti-tank weapons to the German government, and the German government, I mean, maybe it was their bureaucracy or whatever, but I doubt that, because there are many German politicians, especially who were bought from Russian or from Russian companies like Gazprom, and we need to investigate that. I mean, there must be investigations all around the world. I mean, normally you just follow the money. That's the basic of journalism. The basic of journalism, follow the money. Like Ilya said before, like Navalny did a great job in Russia to follow the money. Why are not German journalists or Western journalists? Why are they not doing that? Who was being paid from Russian companies? That we have this situation right now. And to talk a little bit about the libertarian movement, just to be honest, I mean, I'm seeing right now exactly the same people who were spreading all this misinformation, all this propaganda. They're just like parrots. I mean, you know, I mean, look, the Russians bring up some bullshit stories like there are bioweapons in Ukraine, there are Nazis, there's the Azov, they were always like Azov, all these Nazis. That's the biggest bullshit I've ever heard in my whole life. Yeah, just to give you an example, the Azov battalion is like 0.8% of all the Ukrainian military. Yeah, I mean, where's their influence? Where's the influence in the society? All the right-wing parties in Ukraine never gain more than 2%. But at the same time, in Russia, there's a party which has over 70%, which can easily compare with the NSDAP from Germany. So about what are we talking? I mean, let's take a look at the Western countries. Let's take a look in Germany. There's a right-wing party in the parliament with more than 12%. Let's look at France, where Front National get a loan for over 20 million euros from the Russian government. I mean, let's talk about really real facts. What's really going on now? So. And then let's also talk about the people in the US and libertarians in the US. They always claim, yeah, we are the biggest libertarians. Come on, it's easy to be a libertarian in a free country. Yeah, but it's super hard to be a libertarian, for example, in Ukraine. Yeah, and with Freedom Today, we focus since, I would say, more than 5 years on countries who really need help, like Venezuela, Belarus, Ukraine, and even Russia. But let's say who, for example, I made a lot of interviews in my whole life. I interviewed Khodorkovsky. I interviewed Sana Nemtsova, who is the daughter of Nemtsov. Nemtsov was shot in front of the Kremlin. I mean, this is a huge sign. I mean, they say, yeah, there were no cameras working. Nobody knows who killed Nemtsov. But all the investigations, the independent investigations said they know who it was. And these people are still in Russia. They are still in the parliament, some of them. So let's be honest. Like, for example, Sana Nemtsova, I asked her a lot of times about the opposition. I mean, I was super surprised and super proud of what Ilya said, to be honest, because I love seeing a kind of Russian opposition. But from my point of view, there is no Russian opposition in Russia. The opposition in Russia is rather dead or in prison. And to take it from an Ukrainian point. Because all the people I talked to here in Ukraine were like, I mean, the people in Ukraine stand in front of tanks, just the tank man in China, when you remember this really famous picture from one guy. But you can see these pictures here every day. People stand in front of tanks without weapons. And to be honest, why Russian people can't go on the streets and go for what they want? So in reality, from my point of view, many Russians support this war, and official polls or trusted polls in Russia say more than 50 or 60% of all the people support that war. I mean, look, there was yesterday huge demonstrations of Russians in Germany, in Berlin. Yeah, they made a huge car convoy, to support this war, with all these fascist symbols, with the set and all that stuff. And why is that happening? Because the West is ignoring what's going on, especially in Russia, since at least the last 8 years after the Maidan happened. And so, I mean, we have to, and not just talk about the libertarian things. I mean, for sure, to be honest, the Ron Paul Institute, look which people are working there. I mean, there were former Russian paid people. I mean, it's obvious. Just look at what they are writing and who these people are. Follow the money. Look into it. Yeah, I mean, me personally, for example, I was a huge fan in 2012. I also supported the campaign of Ron Paul in the US. But let's face the reality. Yeah, for sure, he did a lot of good things for the libertarian movement in general. But if it comes to foreign policy, especially with libertarians, I mean, sorry, they are just dumb idiots. Yeah, they claim like everything is sponsored by the CIA and all this bullshit. Like I said before, there is bioweapons. Yeah, just do me a favor, everybody who is watching, just Google bioweapons and Georgia. Okay, let's just Google it. Okay, yeah, this is. I mean, they said this story a few times before. They're just fucking stupid propaganda. Sorry that I say it in this way, but you know, it's enough for me. I can't take it anymore, because all the pictures I'm seeing every day, all the people I talk to, I'm so sick of this. Um, and
Plus, I think,
and yeah.
Andrea, sorry for interruption, but we need to close this section. I just want to make a small comment that I think you can reply to. We are libertarians. We are against military interventions, against wars, right? But who is doing the war?
Wait. I've never said something that I would ever advocate for NATO or whatever, but at least give Ukrainians weapons that they can defend themselves. Yeah, otherwise they're being slaughtered. Yeah, I mean, this is the hell on earth for them. Yeah, I mean, this is what we should do. I mean, this is the right of self-defense. I mean, who could advocate against that? I mean, we have to support. We have to support these people. And the last thing, what I really have to address: look into propaganda. I studied communication and media science and psychology. Look into what propaganda is doing and what it means. So all the time, when, for example, in the Second World War in Germany, you have propaganda wants to make one group of people not look like humans. This is exactly what the Russian propaganda is doing since years. And they spread so much lies all the time, that people don't even believe anything anymore. And this is what they're doing in the West. This is what they want to do. And they claim, like, since years, this, I mean, look in the Russian TV. They're saying about the Ukrainian people, and Putin himself said it 3 times now in public speeches since the war started. Ukraine has no right to exist. This means, per definition, Ukrainians have no right to exist. This is an open call for a genocide. And this is why Russians... Yeah, exactly. Sorry. But this is exactly a call for genocide. Okay? He said it. He said it 3 times now in every speech he made. And I mean, listen to his words, what he is saying. That's enough. I mean, you don't have to believe me, or you don't have to believe Nataliya, or you don't have to believe Ilya. I don't care. That's totally okay. But just listen to what these people say. Or somebody mentioned Dugin and all this crazy, really, sorry, I just have to call these bastards or fascists or whatever. So I'm sorry to say that this way, but I'm so sick of that.
Yes, exactly. What I mentioned, and being against intervention, I wanted to stress out that one of the biggest, if not the biggest, interventionists in today's world is Putin himself.
Yeah.
We think interventionism, we look at Washington, D.C. And obviously there were wars that the United States started or joined, and it was necessary. But in this particular case, we have Russia, we have Vladimir Putin as a president to trigger the war. And we should name him as an interventionist, as a freedom and barbarian. Yes.
Yeah, let me just add one thing. I was totally against the intervention in Afghanistan and Iraq. I said that I don't know how many times. It's not like that I'm just against Russia or against Russian people or some bullshit like that. No, it's not like that. I was also advocating against Afghanistan and Iraq, because that was a huge mistake what the Western countries had did, or in that case the US, because it wasn't, for example, in Iraq, the NATO in general, or for example, Germany didn't took part of that. Yeah, I mean, but in this case, the Ukrainian people never did anything against Russians or whatever. I talked to hundreds of people. When I was here the last times, I always had a Russian translator. He was from Rostov-on-Don, so he was a born Russian. We never had a problem anywhere. Today I made an interview. We're going to publish it tomorrow, because it's a super bomb, I would call it. So he's running the most famous club, and he's one of the biggest DJs in Ukraine, and he's born in Russia. So he he said today that he will get rid of his Russian citizenship, like Ilya said, like maybe burning his passport or something like that, and he will become an Ukrainian and he will join the Russian forces. Yeah, and this will be a super huge thing. His girlfriend has like more than 2 million followers because maybe she's kind of a supermodel in Ukraine or something like that. I'm not pretty sure about that, but this will be really important that people in Russia also stood up, because it's not about us to change what's happening in Russia. It's up to the Russian people. I would never call in my whole life for an intervention in Russia or whatever. That's not the point. But we have to get things clear and get rid of this propaganda, because I mean it will destroy everything. And in that case, I think we also have to win the propaganda war.
Thank you.
Because
we need to go to the questions. We are already
thanks a lot.
quite late. Thank you. Did great. I want to read few questions, and guys, let's make some rules. First, answer in 1 minute. I know it's hard, but try. Second, who picks the question first, he or she goes. Okay? I will not finger point who should take it. Let's do this one first. It's from Dim Sum. Do libertarians care about the freedom of the Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republic, or it is only selected freedom for some?
Who shall answer that?
Yeah, but Ilya, 1 minute.
Yeah, I wish to answer, and I wish to answer that. These freedoms of Donetsk and Luhansk regions, it is basically these regions were invaded by basically Russian-backed separatists, by people with Russian citizenship. And we have a lot of videos where these so-called fighters for freedom, like so-called Motorola and so-called Strelkov, which depict them committing military crimes. So for Russian perspective, if these people in Ukraine want to fight for their freedom, for their independence, this is their fight with Ukraine, if they want it. But it is not a deal for Russia to, at least in the very beginning, not when it comes to kind of if it would come to a genocide like it had happened in former Yugoslavia or whatever, it is no matter of any other country what is happening in a sovereign, independent state of Ukraine. That's all.
Thank you, Ilya. We have
sorry. Can I add one really important thing? What I found out in the last 4 weeks. Many people are talking about who are the biggest and strongest fighters right now in Ukraine. And nearly everybody told me the so-called Russian-speaking Ukrainians, which is, I mean, basically that was never a case in Ukraine. Nobody ever gave anything about that. Who, if you are speaking Russians or Ukrainian, nobody cares. Yeah, but right now, the Russian-speaking Ukrainians are the biggest fighters. And I was asking many people why, because I wanted to find it out. And let me give you this example. So, for example, you or somebody of you, we are both neighbors. I'm Jewish, I'm Muslim, and you are whatever, Christian. You speak whatever you want. Somebody comes to our home and destroys everything we have, our home, our family, our kids have to flee somewhere. Believe me, you will fight these people with everything you're gonna have, and you don't give a fuck what you are speaking.
Can I add a comment?
Yes, Natalia.
Really quick. So the Russian army came in on the 24th, allegedly to stop the genocide against Russian-speaking people. And in order to do that, they completely leveled the biggest Russian-speaking cities in the country. So I think that should tell you a lot about the need for freedom from Ukraine in Ukraine.
Thanks. I have very interesting question from Elena in Wonderland. Maybe Natalia will be interested in answering this. She says, I'm interested in knowing the panelists' views on whether sanctions instituted so far and withdrawal of Western companies from Russia is a best approach to stop Russia, or is there a better way? Thanks.
I mean, I think it's pretty obvious that nothing is stopping Russia at this point. because Putin does not care what happens to his own people, the quality and the level of life or the lives of people he's sending to Ukraine. The sanctions were a bit too late, too little too late. They were very reactionary, and each delay cost us hundreds of lives. So we will be advocating for tougher sanctions. There are ways to be evading sanctions as they are right now. So we will be making sure that there's progress in that area. But the only thing that can actually stop Russia, it is Ukraine. And this is what we're trying to do in our country, because Putin and people around him, they understand only power. So tiptoeing around them and trying to talk to him and to them, it's just a sign of weakness. So I don't think that we should have any illusions about sanctions being able to stop anyone.
Can I add just one example to that? I mean, just think about one example. We all gonna be in a bar, and there's a guy who hits 10 people. When will this guy be stopped? When somebody hits this guy to the ground. This is just the reality. Just think about it. You're gonna be in a bar, and a guy hits 10 people. What will you do?
Okay, Ilya?
I think there are two different things, and there are the two different things are, first is how to stop the war, and actually I do not see, to be honest, any other way to stop the war rather to provide to supply Ukraine with weapons, because it is a right for self-defense, and we all must help Ukraine to self-defend. And the sanctions are not about stopping the war per se. Sanctions is about to say in the Russian language there's a word "нерукопожатные", means you cannot shake hand with these people, because this is a fascist regime. So, finally, people realized it. Sorry, it was fascist for more than 10 years in a row, as I said. But now it is very important to say that, sorry, guys, while the Russian government is doing like that, and the majority of the silent majority of the Russian population is allowing this, sorry, it is not good, it is not okay to shake hands with them. Again, talking about military interventions, sorry, wars happen. This is just a fact. I mean, we are against the wars, but they do happen. But what's happening now is not just a war. First of all, it is occupation. Russia won't leave these countries. US leaves the countries. This is, for example, a principal difference, because this is the question that everybody asks. Russia does not leave the countries. Russia didn't leave Georgia. Russia didn't leave Ukraine. Russia is not going to leave Ukraine, and unless it is pushed that hard, it will have to leave Ukraine. And I hope Russia will be finally kicked that bad. So, yeah. So this is the main.
Thank you. Well, I can only say that from the economic point of view, sanctions often don't work. However, we are all so much against Putin, and I agree, self-defense, weapons, but sanctions could be questionable. We know that government will feed itself, and sometimes people, if they are put into a very tough position economically, behave like animals in the cage. They can went crazy. And Andreas, you come from Germany. After First World War, you had the Weimar Republic, and Germans went crazy, right? Under very tough sanctions. Are you afraid of this?
What about like opening the possibilities for visa? Everybody who wants to leave Russia, gives them the chance to leave Russia. Right now, 200,000 people left in the last 4 weeks. That's a huge brain drain for Russia. Maybe, okay, some people say that's exactly what Putin wants. Then there is not even a single chance of an opposition against him. But let's open the market for them. Everybody, I have nothing personal against any Russian who wants to leave the country. They are welcome. Give them visas, let them work wherever they like. Yeah, and also, sorry, I also have to advocate for for like all the refugees from Ukraine, give them the permission to work right now. These are educated people. Nearly 75% have relatives in foreign countries like in Europe or in the US. Let them come and let them work. Then there's no problem like in 2015, because I mean there were many people coming as refugees, and for example in Germany they weren't allowed to work for 18 months. I mean, and this is totally strange. I mean, everybody of us, wherever we would go, and we were not allowed to work for 18 months. I mean, what would we do?
Yeah, Andreas, that's definitely good ideas for Russians and Ukrainians. We have interesting question from Dusan Andres Vilicic Held. He says, okay, what is the evidence for the idea that it is the reinstatement of the USSR? That sounds less plausible than a proxy conflict. He also says, didn't Putin also say that it would be dumb to try to recreate the USSR?
Well, he is not trying to recreate the USSR per se. He is more interested in a Russian empire, the new Russian empire, I would say. And I agree with the speakers before, he's been pretty open when talking about his plans. And like, you don't need to consult us on this matter to find them out, because they're all over the Russian state media and even translated into English. For them, the tragedy of the Russian Empire ending and the USSR falling apart, it's like a real thing. And they haven't been able to move on from that. And that's one of the points he's making by saying that based on the history, Ukraine has proved not to deserve a nation state. And I think it's pretty self-explanatory from my point of view. And him openly warning that Poland should beware, and then Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. And he already invaded Georgia in 2008. So it's like an open secret from my standpoint.
Thank you.
I would like to add about
Agnieszka maybe will add.
Okay, so like a comment on this, reinstating, not reinstating USSR, what we should differentiate between is geopolitics and imperialism that was always present in Russia, and that was present, of course, in the USSR very much. So like the questions of ideology. So like if you think about the Cold War, you have this ideological war, and under the Soviet Union, the gang that was in power in Moscow was allowed only one ideology, which was communism. It was pretty clear when you were in the West. It was pretty clear that for example, your resident Communist Party unit was a spying unit. And now we do not have this sharp distinction. So what it means, actually, it means some good things for the regime in Moscow. So they can attack in terms of propaganda on various different fronts. So this is what Federico also mentioned, like they can sell the pro-Moscow cause to libertarians, to right-wing people, to left-wing people under different disguises. Because right now it only matters what furthers in the interest of the Russian Federation under the regime. It doesn't have to be it can be whatever right now. Also, right now the FSB that is now in power, they learned from what they learned from history is they learned how to stay in power. So they will try to weaken every political party so that a political party doesn't take over, so that they can stay in power longer. Remember what he said after the collapse, after the gang war, they came back to power. They say, we are back in power now indefinitely. So they learned how to stay in power. So why would that be a bad idea to reinstall the Soviet Union in this sense? Well, because the Soviet Union collapsed, and that's not how you stay in power. Now they know how to stay in power better.
Ilya, thank you, Agnieszka. Ilya, there is a question to you actually from Dusan. He says, Zelensky banned pro-Russian media, the main opposition parties and media censorship imposed. Is the Ukrainian government not engaged in disinformation? ?
Well, I mean, as it was stated in the conversation, Ukraine is on the number 97 in the World Freedom Index, and Russia is on the 150. I think there is quite a striking difference between these 2 points. Again, I mean, this is the question when this survey was made, but now, of course, there will be a censorship on information in Ukraine because Ukraine is defending themselves, and this is, I mean, self-defense is not the question when you ask about ask an aggressor or perpetrator or whoever insults you questions about life. You defend yourself.
Thank you. There is this comment from Scott Kohlhaas about what libertarians should do, and maybe any of you would like to comment on that. He says, libertarians would repeal the laws that prevent you as an individual to contribute and volunteer. But it wouldn't be fair to force the taxpayer to pay for aid to either side. Anyone?
Aid to either side it just sounds awesome in this case. Wow.
Well, you know, if you
Like
if you have a spine and some moral values, you wouldn't have to be forced to help the right side. You don't have to do it through taxes.
I can just I mean I can't go too much in the details, but I can tell you just, I mean, there's a libertarian network helping Ukrainian people, and in the first 3 weeks we organized more help than at least 5 or 6 European countries and their governments. So I mean, this is, so to be honest, I mean, the help of the governments, you shouldn't count on that.
Yeah, it's amazing, and we should stress the role, Andreas, you play there, Dr. Kyle Warner, Tom Palmer. Tom Palmer is like a backbone of this network, and there's a great article that was recently published.
I can just give, I mean, there was a sentence from Mikhailo Lavrovsky. He said when he would when he would be grown up, he would be Tom Palmer. That would be super cool for him. And I can just add the personal story of mine. Exactly the day the war started, I called Tom. He was in Thailand, and I asked him like what to do. We are planning this and this and this, and he just said, Andreas, I'm gonna be in 2 days in Warsaw. So this is just the answer he gave, and he just showed up. And since then, we are working, I don't know, like 25 hours a day to help these amazing people here. And this just, I mean, this just makes me proud to be a libertarian, because I mean, this shows what libertarians can do, and not like advocating, sorry, for bullshit or for conspiracies or whatever they come up with. I mean, we can now prove that libertarians, I mean, stay to what they say. And from my point of view, I can just say I would never leave my friends alone.
Thank you. Agnieszka, you wanted to add something.
Yeah, I wanted to say, because I also know people very much involved in humanitarian aid in Ukraine, and when you go a bit further than Lviv, mostly the help that is organized is very bottom top. Like, you don't see the Red Cross, you don't see the main organizations. All you see are private convoy of people that they are connecting with each other on various media platforms and social media, and they are organizing everything bottom top. So you just need to know the right people to tell you where it's safe, when it's safe to go. Then you go there, then you get stuff out. Then you get stuff in and you get people out. Monasteries are very helpful, because when they are on site, they know who to contact, they know where to distribute goods, but it's all really bottom top.
And I want to add something, an important point. Atlas Network and their donors have been doing amazing things to support organizations in Ukraine and organizations outside of the country willing to help us. But there's an important point to understand here. We're talking about non-lethal aid, which it's humanitarian, it's medical aid, very important. But we have to admit that it's not enough to win the war. And if we want to win the war, we need weapons, we need guns, and this is something that the libertarian movement cannot provide us. And this is where the countries come in, right? So we are not expecting anyone to send their armies in. That's not needed. We're doing a decent job on our own, but we need the means to help us defend ourselves and defeat the aggressor.
Natalia, there's a question from Gonchor. I think it can be our last question. We can add some final comments at the end, of course. He asks this, how much do you think it is possible that the Ukrainians will be pro-freedom in the libertarian terms? Can it be enough to fix the country's problem somehow?
I think it's a very vague question, because which problems are we talking about, right? Right after the war is over, after we win, of course, all of us, the free market oriented organizations will go back to fighting corruption, to promoting economic freedom, and making sure that we finally have a working rule of law in the country. So this is something that has been in the works for many, many years, and it takes a lot of time, because it also involves, the destruction of pretty concrete, systems, because that's how things used to be done. And this is something that you have to, counteract. So we will get back to that kind of work, and the progress is slow, because you can understand that it's very difficult to see the change in the system that is supposed to reform itself, right? A lot of the issues come from the top. But I think that it might sound horrible right now. This war also gives us a window of opportunity, right? We will be rebuilding. And the point is not to rebuild Ukraine the way it was, the old one, but to build a much better one. Otherwise, all of this was not worth it. Like all of the sacrifice, all of the deaths, all of the losses, because we want to see a free and prosperous Ukraine. And it doesn't matter if, you are a libertarian, or you're undecided or confused, or whatever else you are. We are experiencing a great moment, an unprecedented moment of unity in the country. And our hope is to do whatever we can to carry on this moment after the war, so that, we can push forward with all of the necessary changes that we see in the country. Because we feel that if Ukraine is freer and more prosperous, it will also be stronger, and it will be more protected from further attacks in the future.
Thank you, Natalia.
Can I add just one thing? I can't go into the details, but in the next days, you will hear some really great news from a libertarian perspective. But from a libertarian perspective, because I know many people who are in the parliament in Ukraine, and I can tell you that the President Zelensky is listening really to the best ideas. That was really impressive to me, because 3 years ago I was really skeptical about him, but everything what I heard now, he's really listening to the best ideas, and maybe there will come something in the next days that Ukraine will get rid of a lot of taxes.
That is very permissible. One comment I just saw from Pata, he's head of a new economic school in Georgia, Republic of Georgia. Very interesting. He says, Ukraine allowed ownership of arms for ordinary citizens, allowed crypto, almost eliminated taxes, reduced regulations to few health-related licenses. it's not paradise on earth, but this is actually true. Last 8 years were productive. They were moving the country towards more rule of law and less bureaucratic burden, which is also in big contradiction to what the confused friends are stating about kleptocrat, Poroshenko government, and so on and so forth. These people have no idea what they're talking about, unfortunately, but we wish they will learn. And one of the reasons of this discussion is to provide this different point of view. And we actually presented questions from the other side, because we believe in freedom of speech. We believe every voice should have a right to be presented. Not everyone is smart, but it should have a right to be debunked and challenged. I want to thank all of you, Agnieszka, Natalia, Andreas, Federico, Ilya. If you have any last comment to add, like very, very short, this is the time. Natalia.
So thank you guys for having us. Well, one of the most widespread comments that I got when I started writing about the events in Ukraine from those libertarians who, like you said, I will quote you, are confused, is that our government is corrupt. So basically, like, we shouldn't be defending it. That's one misunderstanding. And the other one, if we want to end the war, Zelensky should just, give up, and all of us should give up, and the war will be over. So, like, obviously, I absolutely disagree on these statements. But on the second one, the parallels I'm sure you will recognize is that if Ukraine stops fighting, the country will cease to exist and Ukrainians will cease to exist. And if Russia stops fighting, the war will be over temporarily, because, until we win this thing, it will not be completely over. But for the first point, maybe I could ask Sebastian to show the picture that I sent in, if it's possible. So, yes, on this picture, you can see a tiny child with the information of her name, her birthday, and a couple of phone numbers of relatives that should be contacted if they find the child alone in case her parents get murdered. So it doesn't matter if your government is corrupt. This shouldn't be the reality that the citizens of the country with a corrupt government are living through. This is unacceptable, and this finds no excuses. Despite whatever issues, like I said, Ukraine has a lot of issues, but we're dealing with them, and we don't need Russia's help to resolve any of it. So that's the point I wanted to make.
Thank you, Natalia. Agnieszka?
Yes, so following up on what Natalia said, a lot of people may not understand that, but evil comes in gradation, corruption comes in gradation. That's also what I mentioned before. And what Zelensky is doing now, he is basically yelling, give me liberty and give me death. So do you prefer to be alive but a slave? This is what he's doing. Where is your inner libertarian now? And yes, if Russia, if Ukraine stops, if Ukraine surrender, who is going to be next? Will Russia stop after Ukraine surrenders? Russia already showed us its nature. And one sentence I wanted to add also as a close-up statement, and also to the question about Donetsk and Lugansk. Of course, libertarians care about the freedom of all people. We care about the freedom of Ukraine, and about the freedom of Kiev, and freedom of Donetsk, and freedom of Lugansk. We care about their freedom. That's why we don't want them to be invaded by Russia. We don't want anyone to be invaded by Russia.
Thank you, Agnieszka. Federico?
Thank you, Jacek. And well, firstly, it's been a pleasure to be here. I mean, listening to all of you, unfortunately, not the circumstances that we are why we are having this conversation. Just my final remark is the following, and it's triggered by something that Pata commented, which I totally agree. There are many good things that were going on in Ukraine. And just, a few, let's say, historical remarks of the last 15 years. In 2007, if I remember correctly, Estonia suffered the biggest, at least at that point, the biggest cyber attack in history from Russia, coming from Russia. Estonia, I don't think, maybe I'm confused and, my geopolitical thinking, is not as clear as it should be, but I don't think it was planning to invade Russia or attack it somehow. In 2008, again, Estonia, we know what kind of country today is Estonia and what it seemed it was going to become in 2007. Has a very competitive tax system, is one of the freest economies in the world, has a public sector completely digitized and citizen-centric. In 2008, the victim was the Republic of Georgia. In those years, Georgia was going through an amazing transformation, which was a model to the rest of the world, fighting corruption, liberalizing completely the country, growing like crazy. That is what Georgia was. Again, I don't think in Tbilisi anyone was planning to take Moscow or something like that. And in 2014, again, when Ukraine was really, let's say, the Ukrainians, were really thinking of changing the course of the country, looking in the way of the West, becoming, as Václav Havel said, part of Central Europe, attacked, and at war the last 8 years. And we saw, I think it's a great symbol what we are seeing, how we are seeing now Andreas and Nataliya in darkness, because this is what Putin wants to bring to these countries, darkness. What we are seeing in a way is a huge dramatization of this individual psychosis. The problem is that it's a very dangerous sociopath, but it's this jealousy against countries that are changing and that would, let's say, probably as he sees it, humiliate what he has done with his own country. I am very sorry, and I mean it, that Russia has not yet found people of the stature of Leszek Balcerowicz, of Mart Laar, or of Václav Havel or Václav Klaus, if you want. I hope they will. I hope the civil society of Russia can change the country. But in the meantime, I hope at least Putin can see itself and maybe try to learn from the example of the countries that are not, again, part of the Russian sphere of influence, and understand what the Russian sphere of, the Putin sphere of influence is bringing to the world, and that is only darkness.
Thank you, Federico. Andreas, one sentence.
Yeah, my last stand would be it's now the time to stand your ground, and it's about fighting for liberty and supporting people who really fight for their life and for the liberty of all their relatives, or you're going to support the pure evil. This is pure evil. That's the worst thing I could ever imagine. People in Ukraine, even old people, say that's worse than even the Nazis did. So decide where you want to stand in history. That's now the time. I mean, you have to take a side. It's not about being neutral or something like that. This is a fight from good people, really peaceful people, against pure evil.
That is important few words. I totally agree with. Ilya, you want to add something, or we are closing?
Well, I think it's more or less nothing to add to all this what was said. I totally agree with almost all the statements. Only thing I can say that I totally believe Ukraine will win this war. Ukraine will prevail in this war, and I totally believe that the fascist state of Russia proved it doesn't have any reason or right to exist. So this is the most important, that this is war against a fascist state, and whatever I said as a Russian who knows what is Russia from inside. I lived in Russia till the age of 23, so I know for very sure what's going on inside Russia, and I know the process how Russia became a fascist state. So it should be transformed to something completely else before it becomes.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you so much to all my panelists. I want to thank Sebastian, who made all of this possible, taking care of IT side and also promotion. Great job. I want to thank all the participants for your questions, for your activities on YouTube, on Facebook, anywhere where you watched us, where you follow us. Please follow Liberty International. We stand for freedom. We are not confused. And we will be doing a lot of good work to promote ideas of individual freedom, individual liberty, and life and prosperity, free markets. I believe we need to finish. It's very late. I hope my neighbors will not kill me. I use the room of my neighbors because at my home I have small babies, refugees, and I cannot talk loudly. So thank you to my neighbors, and I thank to everyone who took part in this. Hopefully next time we meet, it will be after the war, after the victory of the peaceful people against the evil invaders. We want a peaceful world. We are not for war. We are for peace. We are for freedom. And with this note, I want to thank you. Have a good night. Peace, love, liberty. Good night and goodbye.